Editing large amounts of photos is tedious and time-consuming, but what if I told you that there's a new photo editing platform that looks and operates just like Lightroom, but has integrated AI technology that's able to study and mimic your editing habits, meaning that instead of taking days to batch edit hundreds of photos, it can all be done in just a few hours? Well, this new platform is called Polarr Next, and it's positioning itself to be the next Lightroom killer. But is it actually any good? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. But before I get too carried away, I do need to clarify that although Polarr have been kind enough to sponsor this video, they haven't in any way told me what to say. In fact, the only thing they specifically requested is that I'm just completely honest and open about what I do and don't like about this software so that they can hopefully learn from it and make improvements, which I think is a pretty cool attitude to have. Now, the first thing that's different about this platform is that it's accessed via Google Chrome. So just go over to next.polarr.com, and that's Polarr with 2 R's. Then click the button that says Access Beta and boom, you're in. And if that wasn't a big enough hint for you, yes, this software is currently still in beta, so there's always a possibility we're going to run into some bugs, or by the time you even watch this video, they may have altered the interface slightly or added in some new features. From here, you'll be prompted to import your photos into Polarr, and one thing I will say is that you really have 2 choices. You can either import all of your photos for that particular shoot and then use a star rating or color labeling option to shortlist your final photos, just like you would do in Lightroom, or you can cull your images using an external piece of software and then just import the shortlisted files you want to edit. Now, personally, I prefer using the second option because at most weddings, I can end up shooting anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000 photos, and obviously importing that many photos into Polarr Next can take a bit of time. Now, by no means is it an outrageous amount of time. For instance, it took me around 6 minutes to import 600 raw images. But obviously scale that up and import 6,000 images, it will take probably closer to an hour. But ultimately, it's up to you which route you would prefer to take. I should also mention that although this is a web-based app, nothing is uploaded or stored via the cloud, and all of the images you work on will need to be stored locally onto your machine. Though hopefully this is an option that they will add in the future, because I actually think that being able to access your files and continue to make amendments to them via the cloud would certainly be a handy feature to have, particularly if you could do this on the go via a mobile device. But anyway, from here you'll be asked whether you want to create a new AI style or use one of Polarr's pre-trained AI styles. For curiosity's sake, if we click on the pre-trained option, it'll give you a list of editing styles which have already been pre-tested with over 200 images. So that means the AI already has a bunch of data and it can use this to help edit your photos more efficiently. There are currently 6 options to choose from, and to be honest, all of them look pretty nice going off the example images here, but I already have a Lightroom preset that I want to use for my images, so I'm going to go back and create a new AI style. Anyway, once your photos have been imported, it'll then ask you to manually edit a selected amount of photos that it's handpicked from the bunch so that the AI can understand how you like to edit your photos, and then it will use these as reference images to continue on and edit the remaining photos for you automatically in real time. But before I get too carried away, I first need to apply my own Lightroom preset to these photos, and I can do this by heading over to the presets panel on the left here, clicking the plus icon and then choosing import Lightroom preset. Then if I select all of the photos by pressing Ctrl and A just like you would do in Lightroom, I can click the preset to quickly apply it. There's also a slider here that will allow you to adjust the strength of the preset too, which can be pretty handy. Now, Polarr will try and help you out by also making some automatic lighting and white balance adjustments to your photos, but if you ever want to undo any changes that it's made or you've made, you can just go back a step by using the history panel. Then it's just a case of going through these images and editing them to a standard that you're happy with. And as you can clearly see, the user interface on Polarr is very, very similar to Lightroom. So personally, I found it incredibly easy to navigate around and use, as I'm already familiar with this layout. It even includes some of the same masking options that are found in Lightroom, so that if you want to go ahead and make some more localized adjustments to maybe your subject or the background, you can very easily do that. You can also toggle between a before and after mode at the top here to see how your adjustments have affected the original image. Now, because my preset has done most of the color work for me, all I'm really going to have to do here is tweak things like the exposure, white balance settings, and contrast sliders until I have a result that I'm happy with. Though one small criticism I will make at this stage is that the clarity slider is pretty aggressive. And it seemed to create a fair amount of haloing, which just looks pretty unflattering. So I ended up just avoiding this slider altogether. Anyway, once I'm done, I can go ahead and click this button at the top, which will mark this image as a reference image. You can quite easily use this box at the top right to quickly skim through to the photos that it recommends that you edit. And once I've been through all 12 of the photos that it suggests, I can then click Finish AI Style Setup, and the AI will carry on and process the rest of these images. Now, one thing I really do like about Polarr Next is that whilst it's processing, I am still able to go through and make alterations to the rest of the photo. So you're not having to wait around for it to render or anything like that. This means that if I spot a photo that I'm not 100% happy with, I can go ahead and make some further adjustments to it. And then if I want to, I can also mark this as a reference photo so that the AI can continue to learn from the refinements that I've made, and it'll apply these to any photos it thinks will benefit from further changes. Obviously, the more you do this, the smarter the AI should get, and the more accurate it will be with making your edits, meaning that going forward, hopefully, you'll need to make less of these manual adjustments, which will just speed up the entire process even further. I actually found that switching to the gallery view was quite handy for doing this, because it means you can skim through all of the photos quite quickly, spot any photos that you want to make adjustments to, and then just head back to the editing view to make the changes. I should also clarify that this software is not going to be able to perfectly edit every single photo just based on a few reference images, because that is asking quite a lot. But what I found is that on average, for every image that I adjusted, it was able to correctly edit the next 4 or maybe 5 images for me without me having to make any further amendments. For example, the shots in the evening where I started to use direct flash, to start with, the AI edits were either a little bit overexposed, too contrasty, or too cold, or maybe all of the above. However, after I manually altered around 10 of the images and set these as reference photos, the AI was able to adjust the remaining 80 images so that they were all perfectly edited to my style, and I really didn't need to make any further adjustments at all, which is pretty impressive. All in all, to edit all 600 images from this wedding, it took me roughly 3 hours in total, and that includes the import time, which, when you consider that this process could easily take me 1 or 2 days, that's a massive amount of time saved. Now, the final step is obviously to export the photos, and you can do this as either JPEG or TIFF, and there's all the obligatory export options that you would expect. But how many images you export will ultimately affect the final cost, because currently Polarr Next only charges you per exported image. And that means you can import and edit as many photos as you like completely for free, but when it comes to exporting, that's what you'll be charged for. And just to give you a rough idea on the cost, you can either choose a pay-as-you-go option, which will charge you 5 cents per export. So for this wedding, I'd be looking at a bill of around $30 for all 600 exported images. Alternatively, there are monthly subscription options, which take this down to around 3 cents per export on average, or a yearly subscription, which reduces it even further to around 0.16 cents per export. Now, is all of this good value? Well, I guess it ultimately depends on how much you charge for a wedding or an event. If you're an established photographer and you're already charging thousands of dollars to shoot a wedding, and using this software will save you a few days of labor, which potentially means you could look at booking in more work and earning even more money, then personally, I would say the $30 charge is well worth it. However, if you're still an up-and-coming photographer and maybe you aren't charging thousands of dollars for a wedding, or you're just editing smaller quantities of images, then it might be harder to justify the cost. But whatever the case, if you just want to test out Polarr Next for yourself, then you can get 1,500 free exports by using the link in the description below. So, do I think Polarr Next is a Lightroom killer? Well, for wedding and events photographers, potentially yeah. I mean, it offers many of the same features as Lightroom, and the AI editing definitely speeds up your workflow. Though that said, there is definitely still room for improvement, and there are currently no retouching tools in this software like there are in Lightroom. So after you've exported your photos, you may still need to do further work in Photoshop or a free piece of software like GIMP. Personally, I'd also like to see features like AI-driven image culling added to the platform, because this would then bring it in line with its competitors, Imagine AI and Aftershoot, which already include these options. But considering that this is still very early days for the platform, and the Polarr team are continuously adding new and improving old features, I genuinely think that this is one to keep an eye on.